You know, where this bishop is made to look like a hemmed-in useless pawn or something. So rook ed1, and now I play c5. And to my delight, my opponent, you know, didn't go for the exchange of rooks, which I thought was forced basically to play d takes c5. Let's have a quick look at this. So knight takes, the rooks come off, but here I think I've got a pleasant position. This bishop is very nice on this diagonal. I'm still threatening bishop takes c3. I'm threatening also knight takes b3. If knight a2 here, knight takes ab, and then queen d5 is picking up a pawn immediately. So this is looking pretty bad for white. Rybka suggests king a2. Let's see, bishop takes c3. It looks a bit horrid, this pawn structure. Knight e4. Again, there's a lot of pressure. So basically he didn't fancy that, and instead he plays bishop a2. And now I was just licking my lips here because c4, and I've got a beautiful position with this bishop being liberated. You know, that's a common issue in the Slav defence. So experience of the Slav, knowing that it's good to activate your queen's bishop, is often a major recurring strategic idea. Not only that, I've got a nice blockade on d5 with the potential for the knight to come to this beautiful square. So I've got a lot of trump cards now, strategic trump cards. You know, I don't call them imbalances. I prefer to look at them as trumping the opponent on those factors. That's what makes it a dangerous weapon positionally. If you're going to use the concept of imbalances, you know, it should be, in my view, used as a dangerous weapon. You know, chess is a war game, after all. It's a reflection of war. So after rook e3, knight b6, I've also got potential ideas of doubling rooks here. So after knight g1, though, I also flick in f5. I think this is a very useful move. Threatening to fracture white's pawns, you know, isolate both these pawns if I ever get in f4. And to my surprise, I was expecting f4 from white here. But I was thinking actually, you know, bishop c3 and a knight d5 might be quite tasty, with the idea of knight f6. And I thought this would be nice, you know, reinforcing control of the e4 square with this pawn. And I thought that although, you know, maybe, you know, white can get a knight later to e5, I can always play f6 here, and I thought I'd be better. Rybka thinks black's better here. But actually Rybka, after f4, what does it think? It doesn't actually... No, it does actually give bishop takes c3. But after rook takes c3, not knight d5, it actually gives knight a4. Is that a more accurate move? Rook e3, say, and now c3. I hadn't really considered this. So say b4. Now there's the move knight b2. Wow. What is going on here? Knight b2. So what's the idea? Well, it's attacking the rook. And if the rook moves, then d4 drops. Wonderful. Hadn't seen that at all. So, basically, anyway, my opponent, to stop f4, he played knight h3. And now I've got, you know, a choice of two kind of lovely plans. Either bishop c3 with this idea of knight d5 to f6 to e4, or doubling on the d pawn. Now I had to calculate here that, you know, what if he goes pawn munching, queen h5, because I have weakened my pawn mass with this f5 a bit, and this is an isolated pawn. And he does indeed play queen h5. But the variation that I saw after d8, you know, was him taking on h7, but just taking on d4, check, and I don't have to play queen d8 to protect the rook. I can play rook d8, and here this would be a nightmare. If white loses control of d1, say he plays this, he gets sort of almost like mated. Like in this variation, it would be mate if it wasn't for queen c1. So white has to be very careful with this queen excursion to win the h7 pawn. So that's why doubling of rook seems a reasonable idea, exploiting the fact that this knight is at the moment blocking the use of the c pawn to protect its neighbour pawn. So he plays knight e2, and I get this lovely knight d5 in. And let's have a look at this. This is a beautiful variation. Rook e5, I sensed a weakness because of these doubled rooks and d1 and the potential of queen e5. Knight f6, and Rybka agrees. Yeah, queen moves anywhere, say h6 or g5. there's queen takes e5 in some lines. I think queen takes e5 is good here. Check. Say knight c1. There'll be bishop d2. So this bishop is not also helping white's king safety, not giving it an escape square. So this is kind of crunching variation, which explains why my opponent was keen to avoid rook e5 and also to avoid rook f3, because that would be a target for this bishop again with knight f6. So the queen would be a sitting target. So bishop takes f3, also hitting e2. So that's not particularly brilliant. So what my opponent did was sacrifice the exchange. So certainly I've got a major strategic trump card now. I'm just ahead in material. But my opponent has got the use of the f4 square, and it is in front of these double pawns. And if you've read them, you know, this is often an ideal blockade square in front of the double pawns. So also, my opponent's really reinforced the d-file and d4 now with this exchange sack. So it's quite interesting. So what I try and do is loosen the white position. I first protect my h7 pawn though with f6, so protecting h7. And after king c1, my opponent's bringing his king to the centre. I play queen c6, but in doing king c1, he's allowed bishop b1. So potentially now, if white gets in the ideal world, knight f4, d5, and I do ed, not only he'll get knight d4, which will be very nice for a knight, he'll also be hitting f5 and probably winning h7 later. So I shouldn't be too calm about this position, too confident. I decide to retreat the bishop, which not only, that bishop wasn't doing anything, it was biting granite. I'm prepared to just exchange it for one of these pesky knights, but I'm also unblockading the A pawn. So A5 and B4, classic minority attack, loosening white's pawn structure a little bit. He plays rook G1, so I play A5 now. So my pieces are working quite well towards this plan of loosening white's position. After king D2, B4, and AB happens, and now he plays queen H4. Now, do I really want to defend F6? If I were tying down one of these rooks to defending F6, I decided, no, I'm going to get some more trump cards in the position. In particular, I want a rook on the 7th rank in the ideal world to maintain an attack against this king. So I decided to just sack the F pawn. I play rook. Sorry, let's go back. Sorry. Rook G1, A5, I sack the F pawn, I play rook D5. So he takes on F6, and I play rook B5. So the rook is threatening to come in now with a crushing effect. So there's a temporary pawn sack, and he's in real trouble now. After knight HF4, I take on C3, rook to the 7th. So I've got my strategic trump card.